When I first started teaching exercise, it was all about how much cardio could you cram into one session. And I loved teaching turbo kick and kickboxing and step classes. I'd put myself on a treadmill for 60 endless minutes, thinking that was my only way to better health and losing the 25 pounds that I gained in college. So when it comes to losing fat or losing weight, which is better, strength training or cardio? And if you're in a time crunch, which one should you prioritize? Well, we're gonna look at some really intriguing studies to give you that answer. And then we're gonna talk about how many sessions or workouts you should be doing each week. And the answer might surprise you. And then we're gonna finish up with Fit Watches, what they can tell you and things that they can't tell you. So first, let's talk about body composition because I think it's really important when we are talking about our goals. So body composition, you have your fatty tissue, you have your muscle tissue or your lean tissue. And when you're exercising or starting a fitness program, what will happen is you will lose fat, you will increase your muscle mass, but you will be losing inches even though you're increasing muscle mass. And here's why. Muscle is more dense. It is smaller pound for pound. It is also smoother than fat is. So while you will see a fat loss, you might not see any weight loss on the scale. So a scale really can't tell you how your body composition is changing. You will see the results, you will feel the results, and your body will in turn lose inches and get smaller. And when you're putting together an exercise routine, there are three main components to achieve that body composition. You've got your strength training, you have your aerobic or your cardio training, and then you have your flexibility. And that is how you change your body composition. But you might be surprised to learn which one you should be prioritizing, especially those weeks where you are in a time crunch and you only have time to do one or the other. So let's look at a few studies and the exercise science behind it, and then I'm going to give you my opinion in which one you should be prioritizing. Okay, so the first study that we're going to look at, they looked at premenopausal women and they grouped them into three different groups: diet alone, strength training alone, and then doing diet and strength training together. And what they were looking at was who lost the most amount of fat. And while it might not be surprising to hear this, it was the group that did diet and resistance training together. They had significantly the most fat loss. Then the group next to that, second group, was the diet group. They were the second in line to losing the most amount of fat. And then last was your group that did resistance or strength training alone. So what that tells us is you can't just do strength training and expect to see fat loss. You have to pair it with good nutrition. And then those that saw lean mass or muscle changes, the group that saw the most changes in their muscle was the group that did strength training alone. The diet group didn't see a whole lot of significant changes. But then the group that did diet and strength training together, they maintained their muscle, but not any big gains or losses. So that takes us into the next study. In the next study, they were directly comparing your cardio training or your aerobic training and your strength training. They are comparing them separately and together. And who they studied were middle-aged, sedentary, or overweight. And this group was men and women. For the resistance training, for the strength training, they did all major muscle groups, 3 days a week, 3 sets, 8 to 12 repetitions each. The aerobic training or the cardio training group, they did their aerobic training on treadmills and ellipticals. And then the third group was the group that did the aerobic training, the cardio training, and strength training together. And here were the results. Body weight and fat mass significantly decreased in both the aerobic training and the group that did aerobic training and strength training, but not in strength training alone, which is what we also saw in the first study, right? So if you're just doing strength training, you are not going to see a big decrease in fat. You have to pair it with diet and aerobic training. I can't say I found this surprising, but for a lot of us, when we start a strength training program and we just do strength training, we expect to see a lot of change. But I'm here to tell you that you also have to add either nutrition and or cardio to see fat loss. You can't just do strength training alone. However, the change in lean body mass or muscle mass in both the strength training group and the aerobic and strength training group was significantly greater than just doing aerobic training alone. So the changes in muscle, you either have to do the strength training or the strength training with cardio. As you can probably guess, just doing the cardio or aerobic training, you're not going to see a lot of change in your muscle mass. And you'll hear me say this again and again. If you are a woman who is over 30s, you are losing muscle mass. Strength training has to be a part of your routine for many, many reasons. Both modes of exercise allowed aerobic and strength to decrease body fat percentage significantly more than either doing aerobic alone or strength training alone. So we got to do both, right? And then waist circumference. This is a measure on visceral fat, and that's your fat that kind of goes around. It's in your abdominal cage. It's around your organs. It's a big test in health. So you don't want a lot of visceral fat. So that's why they test waist circumference, or how big the waist is. And what they found was the group that did aerobic training and strength training had a significantly decreased waist circumference, more than the group that just did aerobic or strength training alone. So which is best, strength or cardio? For those weeks where you have time, the best way to change your body composition, reducing fat and increasing muscle, especially because we're losing muscle as we age, is going to be doing both your strength and aerobic training. Add good nutrition, you'll see even faster results. Now, don't let that overwhelm you. I'm gonna lay out your week for you. So strength, do 3 strength training workouts a week, about 30 or 35 minutes each. And then walk daily, get in your daily steps. You will be fascinated by the results. Okay, so we've talked a lot about aesthetics and body composition, but I'm here to tell you, strength training changes everything, especially if you are a woman over 35 and you are losing muscle. All right, we lose 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every decade after the age of 35. You have got to be strength training. So I'm going to give you 5 things that strength training does that we don't normally think about. Our fit watches don't necessarily tell us, but oh my gosh, it is changing your metabolic machinery. It is so, so good for us. So number 1, it increases our metabolism, or our BMR, our basal metabolic rate. This is what your body needs to perform basic activities, breathing, blood circulation, brain activity. As we age, our metabolism slows for a number of different reasons, but a lot of it is because we are losing muscle. So doing that strength training is going to boost that metabolism back up. Next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about fit watches. Whether you have one or you're looking at getting one, I want you to know that there are so many things that strength training does for our body that fit watch simply cannot tell you. You might know that when you are wearing a fit watch and you're doing a strength training workout, the caloric expenditure, or how much energy you expend, is going to be lower in a strength training workout than it is going to be in a cardio or an aerobic workout. But what that fit watch simply can't tell you are all of the benefits that strength training brings. Now, a little story about me and fit watches. It was, 2007, 2008, and given fit watches have come a long way since then. This is kind of when it was new. I think it was called the Body Bug. I was overseeing 7 women's health and fitness clubs and their fitness schedules. And we were given the opportunity to wear these Body Bugs. Every single one of us wore it for a week or two, and then we didn't wear it anymore. We had an unhealthy relationship with it because we were looking for the caloric expenditure, and it was a constant battle of what am I consuming, what am I expending, and for me it was not a healthy relationship. Now, I'm not knocking fit watches because they can bring a lot of really great knowledge to us, but don't use your fit watch to compare strength training to cardio. It's apples to oranges. It's apples to oranges, and here's why. Here's what a fit watch cannot tell you. EPOC, known as excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. This effect causes your body to burn more calories post-workout as it works to repair muscle tissue and replenish energy stores. This happens up to 24 hours after your strength training session. Also, strength training, it's so good for this. It improves our hormone balance. Strength training stimulates the release of beneficial hormones like testosterone and growth hormone, which support muscle growth, fat metabolism, and recovery. It also reduces cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We talk a lot about that in our workouts. We always do a lot of breathing at the end of our workouts to reduce those cortisol levels. 2 minutes of breathing can reduce cortisol by 22%. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone. It's a good hormone, but we have it in excess. And strength training can help your body's response to that. Strength training, oh, it's so good for our bones and our joints. Regular strength training puts controlled stress on our bones, encouraging bone remodeling and density. Enhanced nervous system efficiency. Strength training improves neuromuscular connections, which is key for better coordination, better balance, and reaction time. It also helps the nervous system become more efficient at recruiting muscle fibers, which translates into things, daily tasks, just becoming easier. So we've kind of got to reframe our thoughts around strength training when we're comparing it on a FitWatch to a cardio workout. The benefits of strength training go beyond the immediate calorie burn. While it doesn't always feel as hard or as huffy and puffy as a cardiovascular workout does, it is transforming our metabolic machinery. It's improving how our body stores and uses energy. It's boosting your metabolism, just like we talked about earlier, and it's enhancing the hormonal responses that favor fat loss and muscle preservation. Next up, strength training gives us better insulin sensitivity. And I know when a lot of us hear the word insulin or glucose, we just, for some reason, default to diabetes. But insulin sensitivity may decline with age, which affects how our body processes carbohydrates and stores fat. You may have heard the term insulin resistance. And strength training helps this, and here's how. It pulls glucose out of the muscle glycogen stores to fuel the movement. This emptying of glycogen stores creates room for the glucose from your next meal rather than being stored as fat. Muscle is the main site where glucose is stored in the body. So the more muscle, the more glucose storage sites, the better ability to process carbs and sugar without promoting fat storage. Next up, hope molecules. Have you heard of that before? Yes, it's a real thing. I'm going to give you the exercise science behind it, about how strength training can act as your body's natural antidepressant. So when you engage in strength training, your body is undergoing contractions, right? Multiple muscle repeated contractions. And these release myokines, which travel through the bloodstream and communicate with other tissues, including the brain. Some of these myokines have been shown to play a direct role in reducing stress, alleviating depression, and enhancing overall well-being. They help regulate stress responses and mood. It stimulates neurogenesis, which is the growth of new brain cells. It enhances learning and memory. So strength training does so much for us. And finally, strength training and cardio can have some crossover. In our weekly schedule, I often call these the effective reps. So you're lifting a dumbbell, and at the end of a set, those last 3 repetitions should be hard, should be challenging, but not impossible. I call these the effective reps. And what those do is not only do they change, that's how your muscles change, you've got a higher metabolic demand, your body needs more oxygen delivered, you might get out of breath, and your heart rate will increase. So there definitely is some crossover between strength training and cardiovascular exercise. So let's wrap this up into one big pretty bow. So strength training and aerobic training have distinct health benefits, but there will be weeks where you cannot do both. I do fitness for a living, and there are weeks where strength training is at the bottom of my list and I get to the end of the day and it just didn't happen, right? So for those weeks, you need to prioritize walking, you need to move. You cannot be sedentary. Movement is key to our health. Do some stretching, especially if you're sitting in the car or behind your desk a lot, and then do some deep breathing. This will help reduce those stress hormones. So don't overcomplicate it, just keep on moving.